He makes his way toward the rafters where there are 2 chests waiting for him, and if he can somehow survive this fall, then he can win this challenge. Forza takes his chances and jumps down into the abyss. Because Dark Souls wasn't hard enough, I decided to challenge all of you to loot as many chests as you could in 1 hour from a brand new character, glitchless. If my math is correct, then there are about 45 chests in the entire game, and that includes mimics. Each of them are spread across the entire world, and many of them are guarded by some difficult bosses. As a result, this challenge wasn't for the faint of heart. The rules were simple though. No mods of any kind that affect gameplay, no major glitches or bugs, and you must attempt the challenge on a brand new character. The person who's looted the most chests at the end of the hour will win $1,000 USD. This time there were nearly 50 submissions. Some of you tried so hard that you started turning hollow, and others sent me thumbnail ideas. As always, in the interest of time, we'll be following the stories of the top 3 competitors. I should really say story though, because the top 3 runners took more or less the exact same route. So rather than tell you the same story 3 different times, I'm gonna tell you one story through 3 different characters while highlighting the unique decisions each one made. These guys are all extremely talented, and you can find their information in the description below.
The amazing chest, holy shit, hi.
Before we begin, thank you to everyone who competed, whether you opened 1 chest or 100. All of your names are on screen, and you'll be able to find everyone's chest count at the end of the video. To encourage even casual players to compete, I'll be giving away 3 copies of Elden Ring to people who entered but didn't necessarily win. And those names will be revealed at the end too. With that said, the prize money I gave out in this video would not have been possible without today's sponsor. Hey Mimic, you use Manscaped, right?
Man, what?
Silly question, of course you do. I know the lawnmowers work when I see it, okay? And that is definitely it.
I'm serious. I don't know what that is.
You mean to tell me you don't use the Lawnmower 4.0? The latest in their line of trimmers. It's completely waterproof with advanced skin-safe technology to help prevent nicks and cuts, and it charges wirelessly.
I don't even know what that is.
They sent me one weeks ago, and I've been using it ever since. They also sent me one of the best things they offer, the Crop Reviver and Preserver, which if you're anything like the sweaty gamers we're about to watch in this video, then you know things can get a little bit chafy. The best part about it all is that it comes in the brand new Performance Package 4.0 along with 2 free gifts, a Shed Travel Bag and Manscaped's Anti-Chafing Boxers. You can use my code to get 20% off and free shipping. You'd have to be nuts to miss this deal.
I think I'll pass.
I knew it! Forza, like the other 2 competitors, starts off his run as an assassin, choosing the Black Firebomb as his gift. And this is going to be the ideal starting build for a run where speed is everything, because the Spook spell, which the assassin starts off with, is very useful for sneaking around enemies, but more importantly, for negating fall damage. This only works up until a certain point though, because if the fall is lethal, then this sorcery will not save you. He's going to challenge Gundyr, and his strategy in this fight is to circle him every time he attacks, switching over to 2-handed strong attacks during his transformation animation. The firebombs from earlier let him exploit Gundyr's fire weakness, and this battle ends very quickly. Once he's in Firelink Shrine, each competitor grabs the first chest of the run, which is hidden behind this illusory wall, and they all buy daggers and homeward bones, but Kizaron and Fudge also buy short swords. The homeward bones will be very important for escaping danger later in the run, while each runner is opening up chests. When Fudge QT gets to the high wall of Lothric, he's going to pick up this gold pine resin, and you can tell he's been grinding this run for a while.
I am opening as many chests as possible in an hour, and I am suffering.
He infuses the short sword he bought with the resin he grabbed and takes on the run's first mimic. Fighting one can be very dangerous if you're not careful, but Fudge does a really good job of avoiding and staggering the mimic, and he's rewarded with a dark infused battle axe for his trouble. This will come in handy a little bit later. He heads into this room to pick up a few undead hunter charms, which we'll be seeing a lot more of in this run, because these charms let you put mimics to sleep so that you can loot them safely without having to fight them. In the challenge's rules, it's only necessary that you loot each chest, so this is a great strategy for doing it safely. The only downside is that you won't get any souls since you aren't necessarily defeating the mimic. Keep in mind that souls are also useful in this run, because in the event of a tie, the person with the most souls wins. This next room proved to be difficult for each contestant and caused quite a few resets, and the reason why is because of this hollow right here who will wake up very suddenly and kill you while you're trying to loot this chest. Our runners mostly avoided this problem by quitting out as they opened the chest, which was really smart because by the time they got back into the game, they could easily roll to avoid dying in one combo. After snagging this chest, Kiezeron's going to pick up this banner from Emma before challenging Vort with that axe he got from the first Mimic, which is very effective for this fight because Vort has a blistering weakness to dark. This fight goes pretty well for all three runners, and since there's only one chest in the Undead Settlement, everyone's just going to speed right through onto the Road of Sacrifices where they'll pick up some important items. These are the Grasscrest Shield, the Farron Coal, and what some affectionately refer to as the Melt Sword Windblades. This weapon is phenomenal against most, if not all, enemies in the entire game, and using it is going to allow each runner to kill bosses quicker, which ultimately gives them more time to find more chests. When Forza makes his way into Farron Keep, after extinguishing all three flames, he picks up the antiquated set from a chest in the swamp, and then warps back to Fire and Link to upgrade his Estus and Broadsword before heading into his next fight, the Abyss Watchers, who proved to be a huge obstacle for many entrants. The reason why is because of how inconsistent the fight is. The number of bosses in the room adds an additional layer of complexity, which means that more things can go wrong, and in this run, even a 10 or 15 second time loss can go a long way. It can be the difference between 1 or 2 additional chests at the end of your run. Forza's fight was not without its share of close calls. After getting past the first phase, he's going to preemptively chuck a firebomb toward where the Embered Watcher spawns in, and he barely misses, but he's able to roll and secure a backstab so that he can charge up a strong attack while the boss is recovering on the ground. And this will be each competitor's main strategy for this fight, backstabs. While it is possible to consistently get them in phase 2, it is way more dangerous because of the secondary explosions on the fire attacks, which make them tricky to dodge. After bringing the boss down to basically 1 HP, Forza barely comes out on top, finishing his fight just a little bit faster than the other two. Once Fudge finishes his fight, he's going to head into the catacombs and pick up the Sharp Gem before running up these pots and rolling through this illusory wall to grab the Grave Warden's ashes. This is a super important item which will let him and the other runners buy shards from the Handmaid so that they can upgrade their wind blades. Before he does that though, he's going to take on Wolnir. From there he makes a stop at this Mimic outside a smoldering lake, and an Undead Hunter Charm lets him safely loot the chest without having to fight the demon and the Mimic at the same time. That's when he gets incredibly lucky and finds a symbol of avarice. Unlike last time though, this does not guarantee a win. It only makes it easier for him to win the tiebreaker if there happens to be one. But that would be crazy, right? There's no way these guys would get the same number of chests. Now this is where each run really starts to differ. After grabbing the Mimic before Smoldering Lake, Fudge and Kiezeron both head back to Firelink so that they can upgrade their weapons and make the next few bosses a lot easier. But each one chooses a different level to reinforce it to. Kiezeron takes his weapon a +3, which requires the least amount of materials and the least amount of time, while Fudge takes his to +4. Forza, on the other hand, does something completely unorthodox and heads back to Smoldering Lake where he's going to invest a ton of time picking up extra materials. This includes looting a chest behind an illusory wall which has 3 extra Titanite shards, and that'll allow him to bring his weapon to +5 at the cost of being a minute or 2 behind the other contestants. Kiezeron, along with the others, dumps all of his souls into Dex for the extra damage and returns to the Road of Sacrifices for a quick conversation with this jerk, before testing out his +3 wind blades on the Crystal Sage. With one quick combo and a bit of clairvoyance, Kiezeron puts this boss to shame and wastes no time as he enters the next area. Once inside the cathedral, he picks up the Lloyd Sword Ring for that extra 10% bonus at full HP, and then he kills a Mimic, bringing his total chest count up to 7. From here he takes on the Deacons, and now we're at the challenge's halfway point. So far, Kiezeron is leading time-wise by a full 2-minute margin. Fudge isn't that far behind, but it's Forza who's ahead by 1 chest. Upon defeating the Deacons, he enters the Boreal Valley and grabs Yorshka's spear from the chest in the rafters of this building, and then he heads upstairs into the room where Guinevere's painting is so that he can quickly add 3 more chests to his total. When he's done in here, he enters the Pontiff's arena to give us a master class in fighting Sulyvahn. After one perfectly timed parry, he's going to roll backwards to avoid the thrust and then parry a follow-up. When the Pontiff reaches half HP, he starts transforming, but that doesn't stop Kiezeron at all. He staggers him, and as Sulyvahn tries cloning himself, Kiezeron takes advantage and finishes him off. Rather than take on the Pontiff at this point, Forza had other plans in mind. Irithyll Dungeon is one of the most chest-filled locations in the entire game, and the majority of them are all mimics. With his remaining charms, he uses 4 of them on the 5 available chests, and then 2 of them give him symbols of avarice, which is pretty lucky, but not that unlikely considering how many mimics these guys are looting. He's going to pick up the Xanthus Ashes in this cell, which he'll certainly use to purchase gold pine resins later from the handmaid at Firelink. When he enters the profane capital, he quits out to avoid the shenanigans of this gargoyle, and then he loots the mimic in this room guarded by a monstrosity of sin. The 3 chests in this room can go south pretty quickly if you aren't careful, but Forza's put a lot of thought into his approach. He throws 1 charm across the room to sleep the 2 mimics, and during the time it takes their loot to appear, he grabs the one on the right hand side before looting the other 2. Thanks to the Storm Ruler, his Yhorm fight is nothing short of flawless, taking absolutely no damage from the Giant Lord of Cinder. Interestingly, even though he just got 2 symbols of avarice from the Irithyll Dungeon, he doesn't bother equipping a single one to increase his soul count from Yorm. He must not plan on going to a tiebreaker. After his Sulyvahn fight, Fudge kills the mimic in the Pontiff's room, and then he picks up the Easterner's ashes from within Anor Londo. A little bit further in, and he's taken to an illusory wall which leads to a chest containing the reversal ring. Outside of Aldrich's boss arena is another chest, and versus Aldrich himself, Fudge has the worst luck out of all 3 competitors. His fight begins and Aldrich immediately goes for the arrow tag, which, okay, that's not so bad, but once he enters phase 2, he goes underground immediately and wastes a ton of time. When he finally does return, he clips into the wall, which prevents Fudge from getting any hits in, and his last appearance wasn't any better.
I hate you. I really fucking hate you. Why do you do this? Why do you do this now, asshole?
Following that unfortunate fight, Fudge and Kizaron return to Firelink so they can pick up the hidden body sorcery, which makes it harder for enemies to detect you. They also trade in the Easterner's ashes to buy some large Titanite shards, which will allow both to bring their wind blades up to +6. It was at this point that they finally decided to visit the dungeon themselves, and the hidden body spell they invested in saves Kizaron's life when he's ambushed after looting this mimic in the waterway. That could have gone really bad for him. Once he's past the rats, he's going to loot the remaining chests in here, and then this room in the capital goes a lot easier for him now that he has hidden body. In fact, it's like night and day compared to when Forza looted this room, since he chose to go without hidden body to save time earlier in the run. Kizaron's Yorm fight goes very smoothly, and when he defeats the final Lord of Cinder, he's automatically warped to ymfah to start the Dancer fight. Normally, this fight is a huge headache, but with the +6 wind blades, Kizaron makes it look easy. He's able to stay right behind her for most of the fight, which is the best way to avoid damage, and being locked off helps tremendously because it gives him more control over his movement. Rather than back off during her devastating spin attack, he stays right on her during the entire duration of the move. Kizaron's balls are enormous. Maybe he should use my Manscaped code. When Fudge embarks on his trip through Lothric Castle, the first thing he does is head over to Osiros, because behind him are 2 chests. Getting to them proved to be difficult though, because his fight with the Consumed King was insane. Going into this fight, Fudge actually forgot to buy Karthus Rouge, which adds the bleed status effect to your weapon and would have been very useful here considering that the boss is vulnerable to it. Instead, he had to settle for the pale pine resin, which isn't the best because Osiros is so resistant to magic. Quick tangent, I stopped by the wiki to refresh my memory on how much magic damage this resin applied, and that's when I stumbled across some cursed comments. Anyway, Fudge's fight starts off pretty well. He rolls right through some attacks early on, and his patience during the Dragon's Breath keeps him healthy. There's one problem though. Osiros is against the wall, which makes it somewhat difficult to see him and therefore dodge his attacks. Fudge does get clipped, but he manages to heal it off, and that's when this happens.
Why?
That was so close. He is extremely lucky to be alive right now. A few moments later, Osiros goes down, and his symbol of avarice and serpent ring grant him 95,000 souls. The 2 chests behind the illusory wall bring him to a total of 24, and that's when he makes his way into the castle itself. Prince Lothric's castle is, unsurprisingly, brimming with loot, and most of it is spread between the archives and this room, which is guarded by a very terrifying Boreal Knight. Kizaron and Fudge's trips through Lothric Castle were nearly identical, picking up each chest in more or less the same order. But when Fudge got to that room, something tragic happens.
Stop choking! Stop choking! Stop!
Did you catch that? When he loots the final chest, he accidentally warps back to Firelink as opposed to the last bonfire he was at. Luckily he quits out before it actually goes through, but that could have been a huge time sink, and I can't stress this enough. Every second matters in a run like this. There is no room for errors. Once he corrects this mistake, Kizran and Fudge loot the remaining chests in this area for a total of 38 chests each. But where does that leave Forza? After defeating Yhorm, Forza makes a late trip through Anor and Londo, and it was just as successful as the other runners. He's able to loot all of the same items in chests, but when he gets to Lothric Castle though, he's a solid 2 minutes behind Kizran, and the reason why is because of all the time he spent upgrading his weapon early on. While Forza was able to kill his bosses faster on average, he's still behind as far as time is concerned, thanks to that detour. The only difference though is that he was, at least at this point in the run, an entire chest ahead. After picking up the castle's first chest by the bonfire, he heads over to the Dragon's Bridge, and I actually didn't know this, but you can avoid the flames by quitting out right before they hit you. Once you load back in, you'll be able to make it across without taking any damage whatsoever, and then you can enter the Boreal Knight's room with all the treasure. Since he didn't have hidden body, Forza is forced to spend 20 entire seconds fighting this knight, and once he's done, he spends another 20 seconds looting the chest, bringing him to a total of 30. After that, he heads over to the run's penultimate mimic, opting to use an undead hunter charm to mitigate the danger in this room. Up the stairs and to the right of this church is another chest, and right below this bloodthirsty Lothric knight is the run's final mimic, which contains the Sunlight Blade. Now that every chest in Lothric's castle has been looted, with only 5.5 minutes left in the run, Forza's going to have to defeat the Dragonslayer armor so that he can gain access to the 5 chests in the Grand Archives. Once the fight begins, the first thing he does is enchant his wind blades with the pale pine resin. And this is a great idea because the Dragonslayer, just like other Knight class enemies in the series, is weak to magic. With the clock winding down, Forza does not let the pressure get to him, and he manages to beat the Dragonslayer armor almost flawlessly. The run isn't over yet though, because he still has a ton of stairs to climb, and if he's going to make it to the remaining chests in time, then he needs to hustle. 2 of them are literally in the building ceiling. He's off to a good start, and he grabs the Archive's first chest, which is nested in between these bookcases. Just past these scholars in a room off to the right is the second chest, and after grabbing this one, he runs up the staircase into a gauntlet of enemies. Unscathed, he's taken to the third chest in the corner of this room, and now he has a little over a minute to make it to the roof, where he casts Spook to negate the fall damage from what he's about to do next. He makes his way toward the rafters where there are 2 chests waiting for him, and if he can somehow survive this fall, then he can win this challenge. Forza takes his chances and jumps down into the abyss. He survives both falls and opens both chests for a total of 39 chests in under 1 hour. Forza was inches away from failing this challenge and falling to his death, but like his name implies, he went the fastest, and for that reason he is the winner of Community Challenge number 2. Congratulations, Forza. After randomizing the remaining 41 entrants, the winners of a digital copy of Elden Ring were Oltz, Panada21, and Left Me Here. I'll be reaching out to you guys separately using the same emails you submitted your runs from. Thanks again to all the competitors. If you enjoyed this video, then the best way to support me so that I can make more just like it is to subscribe, and if you want to vote on the next challenge, then you can find a poll on my channel's community tab.